Hi, I'm Paula and I'm coming to you from Nags Head, North Carolina, a beautiful island off the coast. I've lived here for about a little over 20 years, I guess. I moved here from Lynchburg, Virginia, and I was lucky enough to go to what was then called Lynchburg Christian Academy. It's now called Liberty Christian Academy, and I went from kindergarten all the way through graduation. So I was really blessed to have that foundation set in me early. I got saved in the 6th grade, and just because of my own sinful nature and choices that way, I decided after I got saved that that was good enough. And I spent a lot of years as a baby Christian. I grew up, I got married, I had 2 daughters, and life was pretty good. I got to become a firefighter, I was a paramedic, I still am a paramedic. I was in the Navy for 16 years and got to travel around the world, and I loved it. But there was always struggle in my life because I wasn't following Christ. Well, here goes my 2 girls growing up. One of them is what God gave me to stretch me and say it's time to come back. When my daughter was around 15 years old, she started to see a boy that was kind of a lot of trouble. And she started sneaking out of the house and doing things that she shouldn't have been doing. And one night, I didn't know, but I was in bed asleep. She had snuck out of the house, and about 2 a.m. I got a knock on the door, and I go to the door, and it's a police officer. And he tells me that the police have my daughter in a town close to here. And I thought, how could that be? She just went to bed a little while ago. So I call this number that the officer gives me, and they tell me that she's been arrested. And I didn't know what for. He didn't tell me what for. He just said I could meet them down at the jail. So my husband, who's also a paramedic, happened to be working that night. I called him, and he met me over there at the jail. They bring my daughter in, and they put us in a room, and it turns out my daughter had broken into a house, had stolen a car, done some things at the home, using the phone to call this boy so they could have a place to hang out for the night. The neighbors heard her over there, called the police. The police came, and she didn't come easily, so they tased her. And my daughter is about 5 feet tall and a size 0. She didn't get her genes from me, I don't think. But so she'd been charged with 5 different felonies and is now in jail. And they had a fairly large bond for her to be able to get her out of jail. And to be honest with you, by this point we've been dealing with her for quite a while, and I was afraid of her. I was afraid to bring her home, and I thought the best thing for her was to leave her there, at least for the night, and I did. And when I went out in the parking lot, I didn't know this was coming. It just happened, I guess. I felt, that I was losing my daughter, and I just fell to my knees and cried. And that was my life-changing moment. And I'll say that one thing that God had set me up for this moment all along, several years earlier, when my daughter was about 10, a friend of hers invited her to youth group at the church that we now go to. And at the time I wasn't going to church, and neither was my husband, and we had to take her to youth group all the time. So we figured, well, we've got to take her, we might as well start going ourselves. And God was preparing me for that night. And I always kind of joke with her and tell her that if she hadn't gone to youth group and gotten us back in church, that the things we did to save her would never have happened. And we had to go through a lot of things, but because I got back to the Lord and He taught me about what real love is, and about how to care for someone that is so lost, including myself. I just wouldn't have never made it through that time. And as a paramedic, what I do for a living, that moment taught me more about how to love the least of these. And that's probably one of my favorite verses that has held with me for a long time. What you do to the least of these, you also do to me. And I think about that when I'm on calls. I think about that when my daughter was hurting. And I think about that when I'm hurting, so that I care for me just as much as I try to care for others. I really look forward to doing the rest of this class with you guys, and Thank you for watching. Have a blessed day.